Right now, the most powerful storm on planet Earth has locked onto a target. That target is a pinpoint in the vastness of the Pacific Ocean. On that pinpoint live, there is only the churning 30-foot sea, 4 islands of volcanic rock, and a Category 5 super typhoon that has their exact coordinates programmed into its core. That, by itself, should be the biggest story in the world. But it isn't. Because while meteorologists were upgrading the storm to a planetary threat, earthquake directly beneath the same island chain in the exact same window of time. 2 systems, one atmospheric, one geological. 2 sets of data screaming a warning. One single geographer caught in the crossfire. And when 2 apex predators are active over the same ground at the same time, you are no longer dealing with the weather. Then, you're dealing with something new. Something we don't have a name for yet. Asterisk, if you genuinely value what I do here. Make sure you hit like and subscribe. The story is not over, and our coverage is just beginning. Drop a comment right now. Tell me where you are watching from and what time it is there. Asterisk, and tell me this. The strongest storm on Earth is bearing down on 170,000 Americans with 0 chance of evacuation. At the same time, a magnitude 5 earthquake tears through the rock beneath their feet. Nobody is connecting these 2 events. Do you believe that is a coincidence? Or something else? Let me know in the comments. Now, let us get into it. There is no gentle way to begin this. At 9:19 p.m. local time on April 12th, the National Weather Service office in Tinian, Guam, issued an alert that redefined the next 48 hours for everyone in the Mariana Islands. Super Typhoon Sinlaku had just become a Category 5 storm, and in that moment, it became the strongest, most violent storm anywhere on the surface of this planet. Asterisk, let's be clear. Not the strongest storm in the Pacific, not the strongest of the season, the strongest storm on Earth. Full stop. And it is pointing its perfectly formed eye directly at United States territory. Asterisk, and we have to be exact about geography here. Because the geography isn't a background detail. It is the entire problem. Guam sits 3,700 miles from Hawaii, 1,500 miles from the Philippines. North of it, like stepping stones across an angry ocean, lie Saipan, Tinian, and Rota. Asterisk together. These islands are home to 170,000 American citizens. They carry as passports. They pay into federal programs. They fly the American flag. And right now, not a single one of them can leave. There is no bridge to the mainland. There is no highway to higher ground. When a Category 5 locks onto your island, your options reduce to 2. Shelter in place, or shelter in a better place on the same island. That is the entire menu. Asterisk, the forecast was not subtle. Tropical storm force winds were already lashing the islands. Typhoon force winds sustained 64 knots were just hours away. Seas were building 2 or 30 feet. The official advisory used the phrase incredibly dangerous for small craft, which is the clinical language the weather service uses when what they really mean is that anything on the water is going to be ripped apart. Asterisk, flash flooding was forecast. For all 4 major islands, runoff threatening entire drainage systems. This means that even if you're inland, even if you feel safe from the wind, water would be coming for you from every direction. Asterisk, here's a thought experiment to recalibrate your sense of scale. Imagine a Category 5 targeting Key West. The response would be immediate, biblical, mandatory evacuations. The interstate highway system would reverse all its lanes heading north. The National Guard would be pre-positioned. Media would have vaulted wall. Coverage before the storm even had a name. We would be watching because it would feel close. It would feel real. Asterisk, the 170,000 people in the Marianas have no such buffer of attention. They are thousands of miles from the cameras and thousands of miles from any evacuation route. This coverage gap is real. The number of outlets giving this storm the same energy they'd give a Florida. Landfall is dangerously out of proportion to the threat. Asterisk, but here's the thing. Here's the piece of data that made me stop cold tonight. At the exact moment meteorologists were confirming this storm had crossed into the highest echelon of fury, something else was happening. Something underneath. Something the storm forecasts don't cover, and the earthquake bulletins don't connect to the typhoon. When I tell you what it is, I need you to hold both ideas in your mind at once. Because the story of the next 48 hours is not just a weather story. It's not just a geology story. It's something else. And that namelessness is why it's so terrifying. Within hours of that Category 5 upgrade, the United States Geological Survey registered a magnitude 5.0 earthquake. The location, near Pagan Island, in the northern Mariana Islands. The same chain. The same arc of volcanic rock rising from the same oceanic abyss. Asterisk, 2 events. One atmospheric, one geological. Occurring in the same narrow corridor of the planet, in the same narrow window of time. Now, before we go any further, let's be responsible. The quake's depth was 226 kilometers. That deep, it cannot generate a tsunami. The energy dissipates long before it can move that much water. So, no tsunami warning was issued, and that was the correct call. That is not the story here. Asterisk, the story is more subtle, and in many ways, more disturbing. Pagan Island is on the same geological structure as the rest of the chain. It's a single, massive subduction system grinding away underneath. An earthquake here is a signal for the entire region. The Mariana Arc is one of the most seismically violent zones on the planet. Magnitude 5 events are common. The ground here is always moving. Asterisk, so why does this one matter? Because of when it happened. You have 2 timelines overlapping, one above the islands and one below. And the question that serious researchers in compound hazard analysis are asking is this. Do simultaneous extremes produce an outcome that neither could produce alone? Asterisk, put yourself on Saipan. The sky is a bruised, tightening grey. The pressure drops so fast, you can feel it in your ears. Emergency alerts are screaming from your phone. You're taping windows, filling every container you have with water. And somewhere deep beneath your feet, in a zone where the Pacific plate is being devoured by the mantle, the Earth releases a colossal burst of stress. The ground moved under those islands tonight. Asterisk, normally, a deep slab earthquake here is a footnote. It gets logged, catalogued, added to a data set a researcher might look at years from now. But we are not in a normal situation, because the ground that just shuddered is about to be hit with a Category 5 typhoon. And those two facts, side by side, raise a question our emergency plans were never designed to answer. 8:51 dramatic. Slow motion shot of a wave crashing. Asterisk, asterisk. The question is not, will the earthquake make the typhoon worse? The physics don't work that way. The real question is, what happens to soil saturated by a deluge? Two slopes destabilized by runoff. Two structures already under stress. When you then add 30-foot seas, biblical rainfall, and the lowest atmospheric pressure the Pacific can produce, that is a different question. And the honest answer is we don't fully know. And that uncertainty, hanging over 170,000 people with nowhere to go, is what should be keeping us all awake tonight. Let me state this plainly, because it deserves plainness. What is happening over the Mariana Islands is not a typhoon story with a geology footnote. This is a compound hazard scenario, a situation where two separate, powerful natural systems are overlapping in time and space in a way our models are not built to handle. That is the core claim of this entire report. Asterisk, asterisk, not that the earthquake caused the typhoon, not that the typhoon will trigger a megaquake. The claim is more specific and, frankly, more troubling. Our systems for responding to disasters are built in silos. Our hurricane response plans optimize for hurricane variables, storm surge, wind, resistance, evacuation. The threat is assumed to be atmospheric. Our earthquake plans optimize for seismic variables, ground motion, structural resilience, tsunami warnings. The threat is assumed to be geological. Asterisk, asterisk, there is no established framework for the conversation between the two. What happens when soil saturated by a typhoon experiences seismic loading? What happens when coastal infrastructure, already undermined by waves, then has to absorb a tremor? What happens when first responders, sheltering from 1080 Maya power winds, cannot simultaneously respond to a geological event? Asterisk, asterisk. These are real engineering and emergency management questions that have been raised for a decade. And the honest answer is, we have very little real-world data, because these events rarely overlap this precisely. The joint probability is so low that it hasn't driven policy. The problem is, low probability is not zero. And right now, the low probability scenario has materialized. Asterisk, asterisk in risk analysis. There's a concept called nonlinear amplification. The idea that 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2, it can equal 5 or 10. A structure that could survive a Cat for typhoon and could survive a moderate earthquake might not survive both in the same week. A slope that is stable in heavy rain and stable during a tremor might fail catastrophically if the rain has already pushed it to the edge. You are not adding risks, you are multiplying them. Asterisk, asterisk, 170,000 people, no evacuation route, the strongest storm on Earth, a seismically active zone registering, events in the same window. Those four facts are now, collectively, asking a question our modern world has never had to answer in real time. Asterisk, asterisk, and to truly understand the stakes, we have to understand why this storm, arriving in April of 2026, is already a monster, before you add a single tremor to the equation. April is not typhoon season. That simple sentence carries an immense weight. The Western Pacific has a well-documented rhythm. April is the climatological off-season in the fall and fade. The atmosphere isn't right. The historical average for named storms in April here is 0.7, not even one full storm. Yet, not only has Sinlaku formed, it has become a Category 5, a Cat 5 in. April is a genuine statistical freak. The record books are not thick with them. When one occurs, it's not just weather, it's a signal. And look at its growth. Over 96 hours, Sinlaku went from a nameless depression to the apex predator of this planet. The rate of change is called rapid intensification, a wind speed jump of 30 knots. In 24 hours. Sinlaku appears to have done that multiple times. This wasn't a storm that grew. It was a storm that detonated. On the mainland, that acceleration means you evacuate faster. In the Marianas, there is no infrastructure of escape. The window closing faster doesn't change your options. It only steals the precious hours you have to prepare. People here know storms. They remembered Typhoon in 2002. A catastrophe that took years to recover from. They remembered Typhoon in 2023. Just last year, a $3.3 billion disaster. But Marwa made landfall while weakening. Sinlaku is approaching at or near its absolute peak. And it's doing it in April, when the seasonal preparedness, the public alertness, the institutional muscle memory is still dormant. Take the April anomaly, add the Category 5 ceiling, and then lay the geological layer on top. A magnitude 5 earthquake in the same window. The specific combination, Cat 5. April, this exact path, no evacuation. And a simultaneous seismic event. That combination does not have a clean, historical analog. We are not drawing from a library of past events. We are in uncharted territory. And to understand why, you need to understand the machinery that built this monster.